far-fetched conspiracies and extravagant myths. While the devil in the eyes of many religionists has pretty much been the sole perpetrator of everything evil and wrong in the world, from the myth of Adam and Eve on forward, and sometimes before, there has hardly been any evidence naming an actual culprit beyond the gullible minds of superstitious conspirators. The most recent of which is the occurrence of a media witch hunt or Satan scare called the Satanic Panic. Rooted in the evangelical communities of the United States, it was brought forth through the popularity of such alleged real-life accounts of horrendous acts of abuse, murder, and other despicable actions in such books as Michelle Remembers, see to the right, and The Saint Seller by Mike Warnke. To note, Michelle Remembers, written by Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pazder, it was an interaction between Lawrence Pazder, her therapist, and the patient. And here, they did some hypnosis or memory recollection, and all this supposed satanic ritual abuse came flooding back. So they also went around as later on as supposed experts in this kind of thing, which only perpetuated it. They ended up actually getting married too. So it's quite an interesting interaction between the two. The Saint Seller by Mike Warnke is his account of the whole gateway drug kind of thing, where he went to college, started experimenting with drugs, so on and so forth, and then became as high priest of this international satanic cult. And he was teleported by demons and all these other crazy accounts. He was actually debunked by 2 Christian journalists who went around and asked questions concerning his life, like him being in Vietnam, which he never was, though he had claimed, and so on and so forth. I don't remember, and I hadn't written down the names, but there's stuff online, obviously, about that. It's kind of an interesting read. After his lies were debunked, he became a Christian stand-up comedian, and then after that, he became a Christian marriage counselor. But since he'd been married and divorced 6 times, he probably wasn't the best person to go to for that. So he also has kind of a humorous background. Within these communities, fear spread as more and more people came forth with recollections of repressed memories of ritual abuse they had succumbed to. And this was, of course, brought with many family members who were supposedly involved in these satanic cults, which usually stem back generations, of course. Many of these recollections involved your traditional Christian scare cliches: the drinking of blood and or urine, the sacrifice of a baby or virgin or young child, and a wide variety of sexual perversions. However, there were more extravagant and contemporary accusations put forth. Women who were breeders became pregnant as early as age 11 and gave birth to a baby for the purpose of sacrifice to Satan. And cult members would, of course, eat the babies and the bones, so there would be no evidence for it. And these claims have even gone as extravagant and more so in that certain people had put infants in pools where there were sharks who had previously feasted on infants. So it gets pretty crazy. But fantasies of heinous acts like stealing children, blighting crops, if you want to be really old school about it, and coercive adultery through possession, all to glorify the devil, is, of course, as I've said, nothing new. Religious scaremongering with certain decrees and texts like the Malleus Maleficarum, which means witch's hammer. I don't know if many of you have heard about that, but it was a book written in the 1400s to hunt and try and convict witches. And papal bulls like the Vox and Rama, which condemned cats, or specifically black cats, as servants of Satan, which led to the killing of many cats, I believe millions. These all produce validations for events that were out of control or explanation. That which was good was from God. That which wasn't was, of course, from Satan. The Inquisition and the burning times, the witchcraft trials, are an apt example of shoot first, ask questions later. And here, many innocent lives were snuffed out in efforts to engorge these petty superstitions. One of these superstitions that has been brought into the media recently, that I will cover, is the Black Mass. And of course, this is a concoction of superstitions that lined up with fear. Understandings of the Black Mass is that of an inversion of the Catholic Mass, where the Lord's Prayer is stated backwards, the consecrated host is defiled, sexual depravity runs rampant, blood or urine is consumed, and an unbaptized baby or young virgin is sacrificed. Such occurrences of depravity would certainly get mothers to church to baptize their babies and keep the rest in their pews for fear of becoming unwitting parts of this blasphemy. But instead of manifesting this fiction as part of, or as fact in a public setting that merely rallies counterproductive opposition, a more sensible approach has been presented as an option. Since Satanism is a stance of opposition to questionably competent institutions, a Black Mass will be better fitted as a personalization of one's disapproval of any particular institution that the individual Satanist feels is worthy of being mocked or protested. Therefore, a Satanist may be frustrated with the trends of, say, pop music, rap, or the current reign of social networks, and so on and so forth, and they then may want to design a ritual that makes fun of those irritating presences, and others may feel the need to join in. This is more suited to be a group ritual. However, in small circumstances, if one really feels a need to mock, to vent through this kind of mockery, they can do it. There's nothing against that, doing it, of course, on your own, in the privacy of your own home. But it's usually designed as a group setting kind of thing. So any concern for the Black Mass or the performance of it would probably be one that produces a counterproductive effect on the ritual's target. That which puts a great amount of negative attention on the performer would interfere with the performance's purpose, which is that of purging oneself of that troublesome institution. This also perpetuates negative stereotypes that may be further validated through the emulation of misconceived fears that are manifested through this ritual's public promotion. And this statement, of course, is addressed towards going out and making a spectacle of it. There's really no need for that. And as recent news has shown, it becomes quite counterproductive and causes, as I've said, a lot more trouble in trying to either explain what it's about or just get your way out of it. Associated with the belief that what isn't on the side of one's religion must be against it, anything that promotes this fear of the unknown or unfamiliar is ripe for the harvest. One grand example of just this is Phil Phillips' Turmoil in the Toy Box. Oh, sorry, I forgot to get to these, but these are just some covers right here. This one's the Malleus Maleficarum, and this one is kind of a it's not an official or unofficial rendition of the Vox and Rama, but it does perpetuate that stereotype of, in the front here, a black cat being a minion of a stereotypical witch figure there as a familiar to most likely, of course, do harm. There it is. Okay, so Turmoil in a Toy Box by Phil Phillips. And this is an interesting book. I'm a proud owner of it, by the way, because I think it's kind of fun. But from He-Man to Dungeons and Dragons and Star Wars, Smurfs, Barbie, and even Care Bears, Phillips condemns them all. Convictions complete with accompanying Bible verses to boot. I think all those Bible verses are out of the Old Testament. A lot of condemning of magic and use of that kind of stuff is there. But this book, I think, highlights, this book highlights how satanic influences have invaded, quote unquote, satanic influences have invaded the once innocent toy box. But More accurately, I feel it communicates traits by evangelicals to foster reaching conclusions of the strange and or unfamiliar. The rise of new, bizarre religious groups in the 1970s and 80s, bouts of cattle and other animal mutilations, strange graffiti or vandalisms involving religious paraphernalia such as candles, incense, strange symbols, etc., that have been discovered at crime scenes, and rebellious rock groups exploiting taboos, serial killers and other notorious deviants, and even children acting abnormal can all be fuel for scapegoating one of the oldest villains around. During the 1950s, this moral decline was attributed to the rise of communism. Now that sufficient time has passed, this no longer is a plausible culprit, and a new one must take its place. Professor of sociology Jeffrey Victor, in his 1993 book, Satanic Panic, The Creation of Contemporary Legend, reaffirms the following in regards to scapegoating. The labels Satanism and Satanic cult are socially constructed stereotypes. In actual social usage, the label Satanism has vague and elastic meanings. In small-town newspaper articles, the label Satanism has, in small-town newspaper articles, the label Satanist is applied loosely to a wide assortment of social deviants, including teenage vandals, animal mutilators, and gang murderers, and adult psychopathic murderers, child molesters, and vicious rapists. Similarly, the label Satanic cult is used to refer to some widely different groups and mafia-style syndicates, all of which are supposedly motivated by worship of the devil. The point is that claims, rumors, and allegations about criminal Satanism and satanic cults ultimately arise from people's socially constructed predispositions to find Satanism in many unrelated incidents and activities. During his 1987 talk show special, Exposing Satan's Underground, Geraldo carelessly labels typical growing pains such as depression, isolation, I didn't do it, loneliness, and so forth as ideal factors that Satanists explicitly prey upon the youth that has been noted with these growing pains in order to further corrupt America's youth, or to glorify Satan, He further fans the flames of fear in associating criminal psychopaths like Charles Manson, David Berkowitz, and Richard Ramirez to some of the million or so claimed members of a deeply rooted underground network of Satanism. His claims of 1 million, when compared to the approximate population at the time of around 230 million, would make one Satanist for every 230 people. After the panic subsided, Geraldo used an apology for his part, or issued an apology, for his part in shoveling this manure. But the damage had already been done. Innocent arrests had been made, and innocent lives had been destroyed. So I want to go ahead and play you guys a little clip. You can call it a Halloween treat if you want, but it's from the actual show itself. Here we go.
Zena LeVay, Satanist, who A, points out that this is not in keeping with her teaching, but B says, where is the proof? Where is the proof? Why is there no proof if what you're saying is true?
Hi, Geraldo. There's no proof for effects of one thing. They burn the bodies. They either do that, they'll chop them up and dump them in the ocean, or they'll pour them in concrete, or they take and they use them for communion and eat them and then make bones out of the tools.
Cheryl, listen.
These
The
people
stories,
are doing
let me
murder.
interrupt you. Cheryl, please, let me interrupt. The stories dump in the ocean, chop up the bodies, these things, they sound like they can't be happening. Ted Gunnison, respected law enforcement professional, recently or retired now from the FBI, former regional director of Los Angeles. Do you, sir, believe that these dreadful allegations of babies being sacrificed are true?
I absolutely believe it, without any doubt. Based on the information that's been given to me across the country by numerous survivors and by confidential sources and informants.
Then why don't you name these people and arrest them? Never a name, never an arrest. These women come out of the group and they insist that they know the people in the group, and yet they do not identify these large, mysterious cults. Name them and arrest them and get them off the street.
Does he not make a valid point?
He makes a valid point. The problem with that is, number one, police officers don't believe it. I may believe it. You may believe it. Some people in your audience may believe it. They don't believe it. Number two, if you decide to investigate these people, you have to, number one, handle it from an undercover operation. If you put an undercover operation into effect, then you have, in a sense, your own police officers become involved in these heinous crimes, and they are, of course, become murderers. And in addition to that, if you do decide to investigate these people, it's a lot of work. And many law enforcement officers are apathetic and don't want to get involved.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard this.
Yeah, I think that's enough. So, yeah. So, can't you infiltrate a drug ring without being a drug addict yourself? I'm confused a little there, if that's the case. Anyway, so obviously Ted Gunderson's not the best person to have on the case. But in Carl Sagan's A Demon-Haunted World, he touches on the satanic panic and provides a bit of useful information concerning it. A bit that's relevant to this video segment you just saw is out of the following quote. The second and third cases come from FBI files, and these cases, as I'll emphasize, are reference to possession, violent crimes, and other acts associated with satanic cult activity. The last two of these cases come from a 1994 study by Dr. Gail Goodman, a psychologist at the University of Columbia, Davis, and her colleagues, done for the National, with her colleagues, and this was done for the National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect. They examined, over 12,000 claims of sexual abuse involving satanic cults, and could not find a single one that held up to scrutiny. Therapists reported satanic abuse based only on, for instance, patients' disclosure via hypnotherapy or children's fear of satanic symbols, end quote. By the early 1990s, as evidence never surfaced, interest was lost and the satanic panic once again became dormant. However, from time to time, you will come across articles surfacing in the media regarding alleged satanic crimes. One recent report was that of Miranda Barber. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She's dubbed the Craigslist Killer, maybe. She claimed to have been part of a satanic cult since the age of 13 and was involved in the deaths of 22 people in a cross-country killing spree. However, police state that there's been no evidence that surfaced of serial killer style slayings, and this is from a New York Daily News article that was released in February. Further in this article, police investigating this killing spree claims note that the numbers just don't add up. And a Huffington Post article concerning this issue puts the icing on the cake with a commentary of Barber's father, Sonny Dean, who states that his daughter is a liar and a heroin addict, and that, quote unquote, Miranda lives in a fantasy world. More recently in the news, a slaughtered goat was found in a Detroit warehouse district with lines around it that alluded to some kind of animal sacrifice by people who may come across it. Of course, Satan worship was thought to have been the motive. However, a responsible reference to the Satanic Bible in the 10th rule of the 11 Satanic Rules of the Earth, do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked for your food, could clear that misconception up rather quickly. As is clearly evident, these kinds of witch hunts will never truly go away. There will always be remnants of them rearing up in society from time to time. After all, Satan has been the most easily accessible scapegoat throughout the ages. And why should that be any different now? Therefore, in a society where ignorance and superstition fueled by religious belief receive a captive audience, it is best to consider that emulating their fears in an attempt to disprove them is both counterproductive and harmful to the innocent parties involved. Thank you. And in regards to the Satanic Temple, we are not them. The reason why I announced that like that is because time and time again we've been attributed to them. So it needs to be blatantly stated from the get-go that we are not them. The Church of Satan does not itself campaign. As stated before, it's up to each member to responsibly choose what they wish to campaign or in those regards affiliate with. This is also in regards to charity. There, of course, despite what has been said in the past from our detractors, that Satanism is not exclusive towards other people. It includes other people in a way that would have a beneficial environment and atmosphere. Therefore, Satanism is not opposed to charity. And like with the Church of Satan here, though the Church of Satan also does not associate itself with any charitable organizations, there's nothing against individual Satanists doing that. So to endorse a decision, however, through an organization that champions individuality and independence, to endorse that decision of such described in the campaigning of certain things as an institution or organization is not supportive, as I said, of individualism and is not conducive to Satanism. Another detail that must be stressed is that of the involvement of children as active participants in Satanism, or any other religion for that matter. As Satanism sees a practice of making informed choices an asset, a child whose understandings of religious abstractions has not fully formed yet, cannot freely accept a religion or understand it to the point where it would truly benefit them. Therefore, that which involves children this way is not Satanism. When looking at what is Satanism and what is not, one must consult the source. As I said before, there's been nothing prior to 1966, aside from accusations and claims that this person who doesn't agree with my religious practice is a Satanist or is aligned with the devil and so forth. The source then must be the earliest documentation of an organization calling themselves Satanism, and that is what we hold as the Church of Satan and Satanism, created by Anton Sander LaVey in 1966. And believe me, we've looked for things before that and we found nothing. So you're free to look too. By all means, go ahead. But the consensus so far is that there's been nothing before that. Satanism, as defined by Anton LaVey, remains a tool that promotes one's individuality through the freedom to responsibly choose interests and political affiliations. There is an understanding present that one doesn't need to affiliate with a religion in order to recognize the value in these choices. And there